"We have nowhere to go," she whispered. "You do now," the billionaire replied. "Before we begin, drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this emotional story." Rain hammered against the pavement as Sarah Mitchell clutched her 8-year-old daughter Emma under the awning of the Grandmont Hotel. Both were soaking wet, shivering in the cold November night. Emma's lips trembled as she looked up at her mother with wide, terrified eyes. Sarah pulled her closer, her voice barely above a whisper as tears mixed with rainwater on her cheeks. "We have nowhere to go, baby." Then, from behind them, a man's voice cut through the sound of the storm. "You do now." Sarah turned to see a man in an expensive suit standing in the hotel doorway, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen all day: compassion. This woman had lost everything in 24 hours. Her apartment, her job, her dignity. But the man standing behind her? He was about to change her life in a way neither of them expected. And the reason why will break your heart. What happened next shocked everyone in that hotel lobby. But to understand why this billionaire did what he did, we need to go back to that morning. Because Sarah's nightmare didn't start with the rain. It started with a knock on her door at 7 a.m. that would unravel her entire world. And if you've ever felt like you were one bad day away from losing everything, you need to hear this story. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to witness will restore your faith in humanity. So let me ask you, have you ever felt completely alone? Like the whole world had turned its back on you? Drop a comment and let me know, because Sarah's story might just be closer to your own than you think. Now, let's go back to where it all began. That morning started like any other for Sarah Mitchell. She was 32 years old, a single mother who worked double shifts as a hospital nurse just to keep the lights on. Her apartment was small, tucked away on the 3rd floor of an aging building on Maple Street. But it was home. The walls were covered with Emma's crayon drawings. Stick figures holding hands under bright yellow suns, hearts and rainbows everywhere. On the nightstand sat a framed photo of her late husband, David, who died 3 years ago in a car accident that had turned their lives upside down. Sarah was getting Emma ready for school when she opened the front door and saw it. A bright orange eviction notice taped right there for all the neighbors to see. $3,200 past due. Final notice. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Those medical bills from Emma's asthma treatments had drained every penny of their savings. The emergency room visits, the medications, the nebulizer treatments. It had all added up faster than she could ever keep pace with. She was still staring at the notice when heavy footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Mr. Peterson, her landlord, appeared at the top of the stairs, his face cold and expressionless. He didn't even look at her when he spoke. "I've been patient, Ms. Mitchell. You have until 6 p.m. Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Mommy, why is that man angry?" Sarah forced a smile. The kind mother's perfect when their world is crumbling but their children are watching. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart." But inside, Sarah was screaming. 6 hours. She had 6 hours to come up with $3,000 or they'd be on the street. She dropped Emma off at school, her mind racing through impossible calculations. Then she drove straight to St. Mary's Medical Center for her shift, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. The moment she walked through those hospital doors, she found her supervisor, Mrs. Chun, and pulled her aside into an empty corridor. "I need to ask for an advance on my paycheck," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I know it's not protocol, but I'm desperate. Please." Mrs. Chen's face fell, and Sarah knew. She knew before the words even left her supervisor's mouth. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. The board is making cuts. Your position is being eliminated. Today is your last day." Sarah just stood there, frozen. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped. But Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe. In the span of 6 hours, she'd gone from struggling to survive to having absolutely nothing. No job, no home, and a little girl who depended on her for everything. By late afternoon, Sarah was sitting in the hospital parking lot with Emma in the back seat, trying to do her homework while Sarah made phone calls she never thought she'd have to make. Her hands trembled as she dialed her sister Lisa's number. It went straight to voicemail. Lisa, I know we haven't talked since the funeral, but I need help. Please call me back. She tried her old friend Jessica next. The phone rang 3 times before Jessica picked up, and Sarah could hear the kids screaming in the background. I'm so sorry, Sarah. We just don't have room right now. Sarah hung up before she could finish. She couldn't bear to hear another excuse. Another door closing in her face. From the back seat, Emma's small voice broke the silence. Mommy, I'm hungry. Sarah opened her wallet and counted what was left. $23.47. That was it. That was all that stood between her daughter and complete destitution. She had one impossible choice to make. Use that money for dinner or try to pay for one more night in a cheap motel. She chose Emma. She always chose Emma. But as the rain started to fall and the sky turned dark, Sarah realized she'd made a choice that left them with nowhere to sleep, nowhere to go, and absolutely no idea what would happen next. Sarah pulled into the drive-thru of a fast food restaurant and ordered Emma a kid's meal with apple slices and a small lemonade. Emma ate in the back seat while Sarah pretended she wasn't hungry, watching her daughter through the rearview mirror. Every bite Emma took was one less thing Sarah had to worry about, even if her own stomach was twisting with hunger. Then the rain started. Not just a drizzle, but a torrential downpour that turned the streets into rivers and the sky into solid gray. Sarah turned on the wipers, but they could barely keep up. And suddenly, the terrifying reality hit her. They had nowhere to go. She couldn't let Emma sleep in the car in this weather. She'd get sick. Her asthma would flare up. Sarah's mind raced through options that didn't exist until she remembered the Grandmont Hotel downtown. It was a luxury hotel, the kind of place Sarah would never be able to afford, but it was warm, dry, and had public restrooms. Her plan was simple: wait in the lobby until the rain stopped, then sleep in the car once the storm passed. Just a few hours. That's all she needed. By the time they reached the hotel, both Sarah and Emma were soaking wet from the mad dash from the parking lot to the entrance. Emma's hair was plastered to her face, and she was shivering uncontrollably. Sarah wrapped her arms around her daughter and led her to a bench in the corner of the lobby, trying to make themselves as invisible as possible. The lobby was stunning. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, the scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers in the air. But Sarah barely noticed. All she could focus on was keeping Emma warm. She pulled her daughter close, rubbing her arms to try to stop the shivering. Around them, hotel guests moved through the lobby in their designer clothes and polished shoes. Some glanced at Sarah and Emma with pity in their eyes. Others looked at them with thinly veiled disgust, as if poverty were contagious. Sarah felt their stares like knives, each one cutting deeper into what little dignity she had left. Then she saw him approaching, the front desk manager, a man in his 40s named Richard, with perfectly combed hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stopped directly in front of her, his voice polite but firm. "Ma'am, this is a private establishment. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Sarah looked up at him, desperation flooding her voice. "Please, just until the rain stops. My daughter is cold." Richard's voice grew louder, more insistent. "Ma'am, we have policies. You're making our guests uncomfortable." That's when Emma started crying. Not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet, heartbroken tears that made Sarah's chest feel like it was caving in. She pulled Emma closer, her own voice breaking. "We have nowhere to go." Richard motioned to the security guard, a large man named Tony who started walking toward them. This was it. This was the moment where most people would have given up. Where hope dies. Where you realize the world doesn't care how hard you've tried or how much you've lost. But Sarah didn't know someone was watching. Someone who understood exactly what she was feeling. A firm voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Is there a problem here?" Sarah looked up to see a man in an expensive suit stepping forward. He was in his mid-50s, with silver hair and eyes that held both authority and something else. Compassion. Richard's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His back straightened, his voice turned syrupy sweet. "Mr. Hartford, no problem at all. Just a misunderstanding." But James Hartford ignored him completely. Instead, He walked directly to Sarah and Emma and knelt down to Emma's level, his expensive suit touching the wet marble floor without hesitation. "Hey there," he said softly. "What's your name?" Emma wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her voice barely a whisper. "Emma." James smiled, and it was genuine, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "That's a beautiful name. You know what, Emma? I think you and your mom could use a warm meal and a place to rest. How does that sound?" Sarah's defenses shot up immediately. Her pride, the only thing she had left, wouldn't let her accept. "We don't need charity." James stood up slowly and looked directly at Sarah. Not down at her, not through her, but at her, like she was a human being worthy of respect. "It's not charity," he said quietly. "It's human decency. And I insist." There was something in his voice, something that told Sarah this wasn't about pity. This was about something deeper, something personal. But what? Who was this man? And why did he care about a broke single mother and her daughter when everyone else just wanted them gone? Within minutes, James had arranged for Sarah and Emma to stay in the penthouse suite. The penthouse. Sarah stood in the doorway, unable to move, staring at a room that was bigger than her entire apartment had been. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights, plush couches that looked like they'd never been sat on, a kitchen with marble countertops. James ordered room service without asking: soup, sandwiches, hot chocolate for Emma, tea for Sarah. Sarah's mind was spinning. None of this made sense. She turned to James, suspicion and gratitude warring in her voice. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know us." James looked at her for a long moment, and something flickered across his face. A memory, maybe, or an old pain. "Let's just say I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." Before Sarah could respond, Emma let out a squeal of delight. She'd found a fluffy white bathrobe in the closet, way too big for her, and was spinning around in circles, the sleeves dragging on the floor. She giggled, actually giggled, for the first time all day, and Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. Sarah wanted to trust him. God. She wanted to believe that good people still existed in this world, but she'd been let down too many times. By family, by friends, by a system that was supposed to catch people when they fell but always seemed to let them slip through the cracks. What she didn't know was that James Hartford, billionaire CEO of Hartford Industries, had a secret, one that explained everything. After Emma had eaten her fill and curled up on the couch, her eyes finally closing in exhausted sleep, James gestured toward the balcony. Sarah followed him outside into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, and the city stretched out below them like a blanket of lights. James leaned against the railing, his voice quiet but steady. 28 years ago, I was 9 years old. My mom and I were homeless. Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. James continued, his eyes distant, lost in the past. Her name was Linda. She was a single mother just like you. She'd lost her job at a factory when they downsized. She tried everything, applied to hundreds of places, took odd jobs, sold everything we owned. But it wasn't enough. We ended up sleeping in our car outside a diner on Route 9. He paused, his jaw tightening. I remember the cold. I remember being so hungry my stomach felt like it was eating itself. But mostly, I remember my mom's face. The way she tried to smile for me, even when I could see she was breaking inside. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She knew that face. She'd seen it in her own mirror. One night, James said, a businessman walked out of that diner and saw us in the car. His name was Mr. Thomas. He knocked on the window, and my mom was terrified. But he just asked if we were hungry. He bought us dinner, the best meal I'd ever had in my life. Then he paid for a motel room for the night. James turned to look at Sarah, his eyes glistening. But more than that, he gave my mom a job at his company, an entry-level position, nothing glamorous. But it came with a salary, benefits, and most importantly, dignity. He saw my mom when everyone else looked away. He gave her dignity when the world tried to strip it from her. That one act of kindness changed the trajectory of our entire lives. Sarah's tears were streaming now, her voice barely a whisper. What happened to him? Mr. Thomas. He passed away 10 years ago, James said, his voice thick with emotion. I made him a promise at his funeral that I would pay it forward every chance I got, that I would see people the way he saw my mom, that I would help when I could, not because I had to, but because it's what he taught me. Tonight, Sarah, you're that chance. Sarah's composure finally shattered. The dam broke, and everything she'd been holding in all day came pouring out. I've been trying so hard to be strong for Emma. Her father died 3 years ago in a car accident. The medical bills from Emma's asthma destroyed us. Every penny went to keeping her alive, keeping her breathing. And now I have nothing left to give her. I failed her. James stepped closer, his voice firm but gentle. You haven't failed anyone. You're here. You're fighting. You chose to feed your daughter instead of yourself. You drove through a storm to find her shelter. That's not failure, Sarah. That's courage. But I don't know what to do next, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I don't even know where to start. James placed a hand on her shoulder. You start tomorrow, one step at a time, and you won't do it alone. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Real, tangible hope. But what she didn't know was that James wasn't just offering comfort. He was about to give her something that would change everything. The next morning, Emma woke up in the most comfortable bed she'd ever slept in, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows and painting golden patterns across the white sheets. She stretched like a cat, a sleepy smile on her face, and for a moment, Sarah just watched her daughter, peaceful, safe, warm. But James was gone. He'd left early, and Sarah felt a pang of disappointment. She wanted to thank him properly, to tell him what his kindness meant. Then she saw it, a white envelope sitting on the coffee table with her name written in elegant handwriting. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on thick, expensive paper. She read it once, then twice, her eyes blurring with tears. Sarah, enclosed is 3 months' rent for a new apartment. The address is included, and the first month is already paid. I've also arranged an interview at Hartford Medical Supply. We need compassionate nurses in our employee health division. The salary is competitive, and we cover medical benefits, including full coverage for Emma's asthma treatments. This isn't charity. This is an investment in someone who deserves a second chance. You've got this. J.H. Sarah's fingers fumbled with the envelope, and a check fell out. $15,000. She read the number over and over, unable to comprehend it. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, not tears of despair this time, but tears of overwhelming relief. The kind of tears that come when you realize you're going to be okay, that your daughter is going to be okay, that maybe, just maybe, the world isn't as cruel as you thought. 6 months later, Sarah's life looked completely different. She had a new apartment, modest, nothing fancy, but it was clean and safe in theirs. Emma's crayon drawings covered the walls again, bright splashes of color that made the small space feel like home. There was food in the refrigerator. The heat worked. Emma had her own room with a night light that cast stars across the ceiling. Sarah was thriving at Hartford Medical Supply, working in the employee health division. She'd found her calling there, using her nursing skills to help other employees with compassion and care. Her coworkers respected her. Her boss praised her work, and every 2 weeks, her paycheck cleared without her holding her breath, wondering if it would bounce. Emma was healthy and thriving too. She was back in school, bringing home A-plus papers that Sarah proudly displayed on the refrigerator with magnets. Her asthma was under control, the medications covered by Sarah's new insurance. She had friends. She laughed again. She drew pictures of rainbows and sunshine instead of gray clouds. On Sarah's dresser, in a simple frame, sat James's note. She read it every morning before work, a reminder that kindness was real, that people still saw each other, that one person could change everything. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah was leaving the grocery store, bags in both hands, when she saw them. A woman, maybe in her late 20s, sitting on the curb outside with a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6. The woman looked defeated, her eyes hollow and distant. The boy looked scared, clutching his mother's arm like it was the only solid thing in a world that was crumbling. Sarah stopped. She saw herself 6 months ago in that woman's face. She saw Emma in that little boy's frightened eyes, and she knew exactly what she had to do. Sarah set down her grocery bags and walked over, kneeling down so she was at eye level with the child. "Hi there. What's your name?" The woman looked at her with immediate suspicion, pulling her son closer. "Why do you care?" Sarah's voice was soft, steady, full of understanding. "Because someone once cared about me when I had nothing, and now it's my turn." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, her work card from Hartford Medical Supply. She handed it to the woman, whose hands shook as she took it. "Call this number tomorrow," Sarah said. "There's a job waiting for you if you want it, and I know a place you can stay tonight. A shelter run by good people who will treat you with dignity. Let me make a call." The woman stared at the card, then at Sarah, tears beginning to stream down her face. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Sarah smiled, and in that moment, she heard James's voice in her head, felt the weight of his kindness that had saved her life. "Because that's what we do. We see each other. We help each other. We lift each other up." The woman broke down crying, and Sarah wrapped her arms around her while the little boy watched with wide, hopeful eyes. The billionaire had taught Sarah that kindness isn't about how much money you have. It's about recognizing someone else's humanity when the world tries to make them invisible. It's about being the light in someone's darkest moment. It's about remembering that we're all one bad day, one lost job, one tragedy away from needing help ourselves. And now Sarah understood. James hadn't just saved her that night in the rain. He'd shown her how to save others. 3 months after that encounter outside the grocery store, Sarah received an invitation that took her breath away. Hartford Industries was hosting their annual charity gala, and all employees were invited. Sarah had never been to anything like it. A room full of elegant people in evening gowns and tuxedos, crystal chandeliers overhead, champagne being served on silver trays. She felt out of place at first, standing near the entrance in a simple black dress she'd found at a consignment shop. But then, across the room, she saw him. James Hartford, looking distinguished in a perfectly tailored suit, was talking with a group of executives. And as if he could sense her presence, he looked up. Their eyes met, and his face broke into a genuine smile, the kind that made Sarah's heart feel full. He excused himself from the conversation and walked straight toward her. "How's Emma?" James asked, his first words to her in months. Sarah's smile was radiant. "Thriving. Thanks to you." James shook his head gently, his eyes warm. "Thanks to you. I just opened a door. You walked through it. You did the hard work. You rebuilt your life." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I'm paying it forward, just like you taught me. I helped a woman last week, got her a job at Hartford Medical, helped her find a place to stay. She starts next Monday." James's expression shifted, pride, joy, and something deeper. His voice was thick when he spoke. "That's the point. That's how we change the world. One person at a time." A waiter passed by with champagne glasses, and James grabbed 2, handing one to Sarah. He raised his glass, and she raised hers to meet it. "To second chances," James said. "To second chances," Sarah echoed. The glasses clinked, the sound clear and beautiful, like a bell ringing out hope into the world. That night in the rain, Sarah had whispered, "We have nowhere to go," and a billionaire had replied, "You do now." But this story isn't really about money. It's about seeing people. It's about remembering that every single person you pass on the street has a story, a struggle, and a dream. James Hartford learned that lesson as a 9-year-old boy in the back of a car, watching his mother try to be strong while the world turned its back on them. Sarah Mitchell learned it in a hotel lobby with her daughter shivering in her arms, feeling invisible while strangers looked through her like she didn't exist. And now, maybe you've learned it too. The world doesn't change because of grand gestures or million-dollar donations. It changes because of small moments of kindness that ripple outward like waves across water. It changes when one person sees another person, truly sees them, and decides to help. Be someone's Mr. Thomas, the businessman who saw a homeless woman and her son and chose compassion over indifference. Be someone's James Hartford, who remembered where he came from and used his success to lift others up. See people, help people, love people. Because here's the truth, we're all closer to Sarah's situation than we'd like to admit. We're all one medical emergency, one job loss, one tragedy away from needing someone to see us when we feel invisible. And when that day comes, wouldn't you want someone to stop, to notice, to care? If this story touched your heart, do me a favor, subscribe to Rich Tides right now, because we share stories like this that remind us of the good that still exists in this world. Stories that prove humanity isn't lost. Stories that inspire us to be better. And let me know in the comments, who's been your James Hartford? Who saw you when you needed it most? Who gave you a second chance when the world had given up on you? Share your story, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, kindness is contagious. Pass it on.